Hey guys, when it comes to upgrading your home comfort, a heat pump is a great way to go. And we're actually gonna go through step-by-step an illustration of how a heat pump actually works. So stay tuned, you'll get to see my wonderful art drawing, not really, but you know, my very rudimentary level drawing of how a heat pump works and how it can keep you comfortable in your home. And also guys, if you're curious how an air conditioner works, you can view our video here. Will did a great job explaining how air conditioners work, and side note, he did a better job illustrating than I did. However, I brought colored pencils. So we can't start a heat pump drawing without the heat pump itself. So here is the box on the side of your home, also known as the artist formerly known as your heat pump. So we have our heat pump, and inside of our heat pump we got coils, and we got a fan, our heat pump. Or as if you were just buying an air conditioner, this would be your condenser. But for us, this is a heat pump. And on our heat pump, we're gonna have refrigerant lines, and those refrigerant lines go into your house. The refrigerant lines are gonna go to your indoor unit, which is either an air handler or a gas furnace if you have a dual fuel setup. So this is gas furnace, one of those two. For our purposes, we're gonna say that it's an air handler, just because that is the typical setup that we see with heat pumps. It's gonna be heat pump with air handler with backup electric heat strips. So inside of our air handler, and for those who are, you know, the technical of the world, I'm not drawing this to exact accuracy. I'm drawing this to the layman term. So we are gonna have some mismatched, misordered equipment here because my refrigerant lines came in on the wrong side, but that's okay. So we have our coil, and our coil is right there in the air handler. And in air conditioning mode, this works per normal. We have hot air leaving the house via the transportation vehicle of refrigerant, and then we have a high pressure liquid going back to the evaporator coil, where it sits there and just spits out refrigerant into the coil, and that coil will then evaporate that condensed liquid, and refrigerant boils off at somewhere around like 40 degrees, 30 degrees, just depending on what your pressures are at. It'll sit there and boil off at 30, 40 degrees, and then we blow air across it, and that's how we get our cold air. So we also have our indoor coil, and we have our blower. And then in here, we'll have our electric heat strips. So this is basically the setup that we have. And then I'll guess, since I talked about it, we'll talk about it here too. We got a little reversing valve that sits here in our condenser, very poorly drawn, reversing valve. So these are our major components of a heat pump. So in the summertime, so we'll talk about summer operation first, because I brought colored markers. We're not gonna use the colored markers until I'm talking about it when it's running in its reversed mode, which is trying to heat your home. So normally, if we're running this in the summertime, and I say normally because in Oklahoma, our cooling hours far outweigh our heating hours. So when this is running in cooling mode, what we have is we have our thermostat, and little Timmy and little Jenny decide that they want to keep the house set at 68 degrees. And there's a wire that goes back to the air handler. They decided they're keeping the house at 68 degrees during the summertime. And it's 100 flipping degrees outside, and we have the system running as normal. So what happens is as we sit here and run, the compressor's out here in the heat pump running, and it's compressing. That's the motor that makes the whole machine run, and it is moving refrigerant from one state of being to another. So we're gonna start here. Out here in the condenser, we have a compressed, basically high density liquid. That's why it's called the compressor. The compressor is taking cool gas and compressing it into a high pressure liquid. And that high pressure liquid goes out of this refrigerant line all the way back into your house, wherever your air handler or furnace is at. And then it runs through this evaporator coil, and it just sits there and sprays that high pressure liquid into the evaporator coil. And refrigerant boils off somewhere around 40 degrees. And whenever it boils off at 40 degrees, obviously this coil gets nice and chilly. It gets really cold. Well, then what we do via a blower is we pull air across that coil. And whenever we pull air across it, the air in the house might be somewhere around, I don't know, 78 degrees. Let's say you guys have, little Jimmy and Jenny have left the windows open all day and it's a little bit warmer in the home than it should be. Well, now we pull, that warm air across the coil, the cold coil, and now we have cool air coming out of our system. So that is what happens. And then we have this cool gas because we had a condensed liquid and we sprayed it into the evaporator coil. The evaporator coil evaporated that condensed liquid. Now it's a low pressure gas returning back to the heat pump outside, and the process starts over again. That is what it is doing in air conditioning or cooling mode. So now wintertime has come along, and now instead of being 100 degrees outside, it's 36 degrees outside. And now we want to keep it 68 degrees inside, and we don't want to run our electric heat strips because those are going to cost us a bunch of money in utility bills to run. So what do? Well, we just go over to our thermostat set to 68 because most thermostats today have automatic sensing on emergency heat or auxiliary heat. If you have electric heat strips, it's going to be auxiliary. Actually, if you have backup heat, it's going to be auxiliary heat. So if you have a manual switch to auxiliary heat, that's how you activate either the heat strips or the gas furnace to come on. But until that is done, either the thermostat will do it because it'll recognize that it's not keeping up, or you'll manually have to switch to auxiliary heating. Heat strips and or gas heat will not be activated. So, but at this, we should be able to maintain both of these. We should be able to maintain the 68 degree home on a 36 degree winter day. So now, like I said, we had cool, low pressure gas in here in the evaporator coil. Now what we have is we have changed roles here in a heat pump. This reversing valve has been activated. So now the flow of refrigerant has been changed. So now instead of a hot, high pressure liquid out here, we have a nice, cool, low pressure gas out here. And that low pressure gas, we're gonna pull air across it. When we pull air across it, we're air conditioning the outside. We are cooling down the outside. I know it sounds like we're burning money, but we're not, because we are trying to keep our house nice and toasty. So we are now just putting a bunch of cool air outside. If you were to go outside during your heat pump, running in heat mode and put your hand over it, it would be cooler, probably by quite a bit cooler than the outside air. So we are gonna have cold air blowing outside, all those things mom and dad told you about air conditioning outside. Apparently we're doing it because we are running our heat pump in heating mode. So now what we've done is we've turned this, which once was known as our indoor evaporator coil, is now just known as our indoor coil. And we are now making this the condensing coil. And so now this condensing coil is getting nice and toasty. What we're doing is we are making this coil work, and it is gonna condense all the refrigerant in that coil. And whenever refrigerant condenses, because of the pressure that we're putting on it via the compressor, it raises in temperature. When it raises in temperature, we pull air across it. When we pull air across a warm refrigerant, we are now heating your home. It's not gonna be as warm and toasty as a gas or electric heater is, but what we do is now we have a hot, high pressure liquid going outside. This is now being treated as the evaporator coil. We sit there and we spray the hot, high pressure liquid into the coil, and it is now operating as our evaporator coil. And then as it evaporates, again, refrigerant evaporates somewhere around 40 degrees. Well, once that process is completed, then we just get a nice, cool, low pressure gas coming back to our indoor coil, where we start the process all over again. Hope this helped. Guys, if you are interested in upgrading your home comfort via a heat pump, you can scan the QR code here or click the link down below and get an instant estimate in less than about 2 minutes. All we need is a little bit of information from you to verify that you are in our service area. But beyond that, you can get a clear, concise picture of what it's going to cost to upgrade your home comfort with a heat pump this season. As always, do something nice for somebody. You never know, it might change their life. Here we go.